Good Wednesday afternoon and welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's Jeremy Werner and Derek Piper with you talking Illini hoops at 1 p.m. Wednesday in the afternoon. And we figured if Illinois fans are going to show up by the thousands on a Wednesday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon, whatever it was, to watch Illinois basketball from Spain, a live stream, they can show up to talk about what we learned from Spain for the live stream. So how are you, Derek? You ready for some hoops chat here on August 16th?
Very ready. Yes, I'm doing well and creeping up towards football season. That's what I'm gearing up for. As a Bears fan, getting unreasonably excited. Illinois football, it's going to be a big season as well. But hoops is always hot for Illini fans, and especially when you have a trip to talk about. So let's get to it for sure.
Yeah, I want to get into it. Do you have any hot Bears takes at the moment? I've been listening a little bit. Wasn't able to watch because I was at practice and covering things. But Justin Fields throwing for -7 yards, but going for 3 touchdowns in the air, I should say. That's encouraging for me that he has playmakers. I'm excited to actually be competitive and to see weapons around a talented quarterback who still has some question marks.
Yeah, I mean, DJ Moore has got a chance to be a legit number one receiver, a guy that went over 1,000 yards pretty regularly there in Carolina and didn't have the best of quarterback play. So hope Chase Claypool can stay healthy and actually live up to his physical talents. But I'm excited about, like you said, the weapons they put around him. I thought they used him well second half of the season, like gearing towards his strengths with his running ability. And I'm going to be way too overly invested in that Week 1 Packers game. I just know it. I'll be going in expecting to win because number 4 in Favre and number 12 in Rodgers, neither one of those guys are showing up. But I'll also know in the back of my mind that the Packers do own us until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and we just are conditioned to assume they got another one. That's going to be awesome. But I got to say, watching Aaron Rodgers be cool on Hard Knocks is a lot better when he's in a Jets jersey for me. It's been a little bit more entertaining in that way. I think defensive line-wise, defense, I got some questions. Offensive line, can they protect him well enough? We're still a year away from actual contention, but this is the fun year, Derek, because we don't have a lot of expectations other than Justin Fields, please be good. Playmakers, please be good. And then the rest we could potentially fix. But if we're good, it's like one of those surprise years, kind of like the Cubs are having. Like that, those are some of the most fun years you can have as a fan.
Yeah, it is that year before the real expectations probably really set in. I like the secondary. I think there's a lot of talent in the back end. Eddie Jackson actually had a pretty nice season last year. The young guys, Kyler Gordon, you still have Jalen Johnson back there too, but Jaquan Brisker as a safety that I'm excited about. Get some linebackers in free agency, but up front, both sides, can they protect them? Can our up front stop teams rushing attacks? That's another thing. Can get owned in the trenches. We did get, I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, but Unique Ngakoue.
That's right. Well done.
Right? Yeah. Can you give us close to double-digit sacks or getting there in that range? Yeah, it's one of those it's one of those have fun seasons, and it's of course more fun when you got a chance to win and maybe be relevant. But it's a division that's kind of up for grabs now, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy the ride. I've also put a big circle around Illinois at Kansas. I think I'm really, really intrigued by that matchup, and I just can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, I got a lot of things I could do there. I'm more like invested in Carolina being terrible than the Bears being really good this year because I want that draft pick to be really high. And then Illinois, I'm sitting here. I'm like trading thoughts back and forth. I got to make my season prediction, Derek, and the pressure is now on me. But I'll give the floor to you. We don't ask you a lot about Illinois football here on the pod. So give me your thoughts, your prediction, whatever you got for Illinois football in the next 2 minutes before we switch to basketball.
I mean, I'm going to say defensively, I went in last season. You lost a couple of pieces. I'm like, surely this will not be the same caliber of defense. They'll take a slight step back, and then they were the number 1 scoring defense in the country. So I'm not going to doubt too much. Yes, Ryan Walters was a big part of that, but Brett Bielema's ability with that front 7 that should be pretty strong. Concerned about the back end, but you're playing in the Big Ten. Like you're not in the Big 12 where it's a bunch of air raid and stuff that you're going to see week in and week out. So I think that is something you can make up for. And then, I mean, the idea, though, offensively, a new quarterback. I love DeVito's just he was a known commodity, high completion percentage, thought he made good decisions. I think Luke Altmaier is going to make more mistakes. And then replacing Chase Brown is going to be a high task. So I think it's a bowl team. I'm maybe not as bullish on some. Some are, my boy on the radio, Lante, is already convincing himself. I think he does this every year that Illinois is going to win the Big Ten West. But I'd say 7 wins, 6, 7 wins. That's kind of the range I'm in.
All right. That's that's a lower man on Illinois football right now. And yeah, I'm in that range where I could make people really happy or make people that's all you're doing. I think there's gonna be a lot of close games in the Big Ten West, and Illinois got some question marks that need to be answered a little bit. I do think they'll be pretty solid in the Big Ten West. So we'll talk more about that later. People tuning in for Illinois basketball talk. And Illinois does the sweep, unlike in Italy. Derek, they didn't have Andres Felice and Kofi Coburn in Italy, but they have a full roster here besides Marcus Domask, and they take care of business with 3 wins. So how'd they do, Derek? How would you grade the trip?
I think overall, and you do got to give some qualifiers here. We only got to see one of the 3 games, so that is something we got to take into account. I think overall the competition wasn't great. I do know that the Valencia game, which we did watch via stream, was one that they kind of pinpointed as this is probably our biggest test. Well, I got some more information. We were wondering, this can't be the same team that took Nebraska to the wire. Yes, Nebraska without Tominaga. Actually, it seemed like, or I'd been told that 3, maybe Valencia's top 3 players were playing in the FIBA 3-on-3. So they left for in between those matchups, did not play against Illinois, and then Illinois blew the doors off of them. So, and then the final game, I think they thought was their best game collectively. The competition wasn't great. I don't think they felt like the Madrid All-Star team that they went into this fourth quarter trailing by was a great team. Illinois just didn't play all that well. So all that being said, I would say probably a C+, B-. And again, it's hard to fully know without having seen everything. Yes, we'll get into some of the concerns, which definitely you look at the box scores and the team shooting percentages and that kind of thing. But you came away healthy. You were able to get a lot of guys a lot of minutes. You spread it out pretty well. I think some of the young guys, in particular, Amani Hansberry, played great. And you showed some of your depth too. So I think that it was probably a C+, B-, but obviously Brad Underwood would probably be able to give a better grade on how he feels as well.
Yeah, and I think this is only a positive. Even if you would have lost that first game or whatever, Derek, it's a positive when you can get this many practices. It feels like half the Big Ten was on these trips this year, but to get those 10 practices with a team with so many newcomers, I know Marcus Domask was not a part of that, but just to be around each other for that long and to get this experience, I think is great as well. But a lot of minutes for a lot of these guys playing with each other, I think is. I just don't think we should discount that. That's the biggest part of all of this is just the experience together, whether it's through practice or through these 3 games.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you get to tinker with different lineup pairings. You get to see what it looks like when Draven Gibbs-Lawhorn starts a game at point guard versus Ty Rodgers is going to get his minutes at point as well. And just watching some of that chemistry build. But and then you see each other so much in those summer 5-on-5, just to see somebody else and kind of just start to create that us against somebody else dynamic, the team chemistry and fighting through a game-like environment. And yeah, I mean, you look at the end of the trip, you won by an average margin of 30 points. You didn't have to have too many close calls, tight moments, and that kind of a sense. But I think that in terms of Brad mentioned in his final statement after the final game there in Barcelona, like, starting to pinpoint some of the characteristics of what this team should be is a good rebounding team, a team that can be disruptive defensively and get out in transition. They were able to do those type of things. And it is a learning experience on the court. It's a great experience off the court of what they get to go out and see and do and just bond together as a team. And all in all, I think anybody going on a trip like this in August takes a good amount of value and hopes to roll it into the fall.
All right. Based on the one game we were able to see and based on the box scores, Derek, what was the biggest positive Illinois showed as a team in Spain?
I think depth is probably a good place to start. I think there are a couple of different areas I could go with this, but I do like the depth of this team when they can play 9-10 guys. You throw Damask in that mix, and yes, you're going to ultimately play everybody on this kind of a trip. But we've talked about before, I think the front court's got a chance to just have a ton of ability to pair different guys together, whether you want to play Coleman at the 5 and slot Gary at the 4, or Damask can play the 4, or Goody could play the 4. Play Dane there, who played pretty well over in Spain, and is a guy that we definitely aren't forgetting about in this mix, because he played differently when Dane's on the court. He's a guy you can throw the ball into, back to the basket, pair him with Coleman at the 4, or again, some of those other guys that can slot in there at the mix as well. And Amani Hansberry made sure with his stat lines that he's someone that, yes, has traffic in front of him. Yes, he's a freshman, looked pretty good and was very productive. And I mean, we talked a lot of, and during the recruitment and after Illinois landed him, how much I love his game. I love his potential, what he can develop into. So I really like that part of Illinois in terms of what they can do in the front court. I think they got a lot of other pieces, wing and guard. Yes, point guard is something that is still very unproven, but I just like the number of guys they can throw at people. I think it plays into, if you want to play a faster tempo, you can throw more guys out there, keep guys fresh. You can play through foul trouble. And then just kind of maybe go some subheaders here. I do think that rebounding was something that really stood out. Look at their offensive rebounding numbers. I mean, they got back 51% of their misses, which, yes, they just were able to overwhelm people on the glass with their physicality, their athleticism. I think that's a strength. And they turn people over a lot. I don't think that's something that they're necessarily going into this season saying we're going to be a super high turnover defense. But when you have athleticism and some pretty darn good individual defenders, you are able to play that into fast break points. And they did that on this trip as well.
Yeah. I was chatting with our boy Trotter and a few other people yesterday about, offensively, like that's going to be a concern we talk about here, but what's their offense? For me on this trip, it was offensive rebound and get steals and go in transition, because this team in transition is ridiculous. I mean, Terrence Shannon, we saw Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn with maybe the plays you said of the trip with his windmill dunk, Justin Harmon, Sincere Harris, Coleman Hawkins, Quincy Gary. This is a big athletic team. They are freight trains in transition. And Derek, they need to do that. They need to dominate the glass, and they need to get some steals and turn that into offense, because I think it's easy offense for a team that I expect is not going to have consistent offense.
Yeah, half court could be an issue when you think about trying to have Ty Rodgers settle into that role, and you need him to be able to facilitate. And if you're not playing him on the ball at points, probably Draven Gibbs-Lawhorn. I'd say Terrence can't initiate some offense and stuff like that, but it's just this team's more built to play kind of in that open court, and they got a number of slashers that can go to the basket. And I think a guy like Luke Goody can run to the wing, run to the corner. Damask can spot up. Coleman can be kind of that trailer guy, and they're able to get out and go. And they're not going to be able to physically overwhelm and athletically overwhelm teams as much as they did on this trip. You go into the Big Ten. I mean, they can do that. We've seen it with Wisconsin. Why Illinois has been a tough one for them here recently is because they've just been more athletic for them. And I mean, it helps when you have an All-American and Kofi, All-American Io, but just that kind of profile that Illinois has upgraded their athleticism, that's just given some teams some problems. But there's no doubt they can get up and down. I do think opportunistic defense in terms of trying to get those steals to be able to play that way in fast break is something they should look to do, because it can kind of take away from some of what we're going to talk about here in terms of weaknesses, the shooting and some of the point guard play.
All right, before we talk about the concerns, I want to bring up our guys at Homefield. They're a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. And what I love about this brand, I think Derek has a few of these shirts. I have a few of these shirts, man. They're so comfortable and they have the best design. They go back. They're all about authenticity and nostalgia. And they go back. They find the most unique logos, designs of each school, their mascots and iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. The Ringer tee, I know our boy Brad Evans has the orange Ringer tee here. They got the script Illinois. They got the 0405 Illinois, the underline. They got the 80s Illini football helmet. It's fantastic stuff. The Flying Illini shirt as well. I have one of those, and incredibly comfortable and really good design. I'm telling you guys, give their site a look. It's not the typical Illinois gear you usually see. You can find them at homefieldapparel.com, where you can see their selection of colleges available. And guess what? Our listeners get 15% off their first order with discount code Illini23. 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com with discount code Illini23. It's the perfect apparel to get you ready for the upcoming season, so check them out. All right, Derek, let's talk about the concerns. And it's all on offense, isn't it? This team shot 20% from three. Derek, you crunched the numbers out of here, and the free throw shooting wasn't much better. So what of that is your biggest concern?
Both, but I think 3-point shooting is something you look at for sure as a team. It was well documented. 335th last year out of 363 Division I teams in 3-point shooting percentage, and that was between 30 and 31%. Obviously, 20% would be the worst in the country. I'm not saying they're going to do that across the course of an entire season. Yes, you were missing Marcus Damask, who can be one of your better 3-point shooters, but it's got to be better. You got to be able to be having defenses go out to the line and respect you. Otherwise, lanes are clogged up for Terrence Shannon. You're going to be able to crash in on Dane Danger when he has the ball on the post, and you just have some non-shooters like a Ty Rodgers. Sincere Harris was willing to take threes. He didn't make them. Even Terrence, who's a guy who's been kind of streaky as a 3-point shooter, and at least he was last year. I think a big question as you look for him being, an alpha dog, as can he be a first-team All-American? Like, he shot a career-high 38% from three his last season at Texas Tech. Yes, it was more of a spot-up role. He wasn't asked to do as much in terms of being the one, scoring option number one, but last year, he's 31% on the season, sub 30% in Big Ten play. And across the board, Illinois just really struggles shooting the three. You're 3 for 25 in that first game right off the bat. I do think it's of note, and I'm not making excuses for him, but it is different. It's not apples to apples like an in-season trip to Vegas, how you prepare for a game versus going to Spain. So, I think it's notable that you're in Vegas, you're there the day before the game, T-Mobile Arena, you practice. Then day of the game, you come up, you have a shoot around, and then you return and you play the game. Here on these foreign trips, you show up and play the game. You don't practice in between. You go on tours and you eat fancy dinners and whatever. So there is some of that needs to have the context of the shooting numbers, but also at the same time, this is a team that needs to shoot the ball a lot better than last year. Right. It has to happen. And then at the free throw line, Dane's a 50% free throw shooter. Ty didn't shoot great from the line. It was a little bit better down the stretch of the trip than on the front end. And 60% from the line would have been dead last in the country last year. Like, Minnesota was 62%, worst in the country at the free throw line. Illinois 60% on this trip. So those are supposed to be free points that were not nearly free enough for Illinois last year. And you wonder if that's going to be an issue, because combine it all together. Let's say this team is not much improved, if at all, from three or the free throw line, and they got point guard questions. That team's not going anywhere.
Yeah, they're not going. Like, they can win some games, get to the tournament, but they're not going deep. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And listen, I think Domas can help. I don't think he's some 45% 3-point shooter is going to fix all your problems, right? I mean, it is 3 games. It's a small sample size, but it's 20%. That's alarming. That's an alarmingly low percentage. The free throws, I think I might be more concerned about, though, because 79 threes is too many. Like, this team should not be shooting 25 threes a game like they were last year. Like, they shot too many threes last year because they were bad at it. But free throws, they should get a lot of free throws, Derek, and that's easy points, but they don't make them like that. And then those turn into basically kind of turnovers. So I'm really concerned about that. Like, I don't expect Danger to be great. Rodgers did show some improvement late in this trip, but that has me concerned because Ty Rodgers can get to the free throw line a lot. Dane Danger gets to the free throw line a lot. Sincere Harris needs to make free throws moving forward if he wants to play. So that's a huge concern for me, because I do think this team, as physical as they are, as good as they'll be in the glass, they're going to get a lot of free throw attempts. Can't shoot 17 for 31.
No, and like Quincy Guerrier is someone that you expect to get after on the offensive glass. That usually leads to some fouls inside. He only shot 4 for 10 from the line on this trip. And I do like the Terrence. I mean, Terrence is darn near an 80% free throw shooter. You look over the course of his collegiate career, a guy that is obviously getting fouled a lot. I don't worry at all about him going to the free throw line and making them. But beyond that, guys that will be at the line, like you said, Ty, Dane, Guerrier's got to make them better. But Dane is 50%. Ty was below that last year. Sincere, small sample size. I think he was 2 of 10 on the season, maybe from the free throw line last year. Those are things that, they can kill you. They're essentially turnovers. They're turnovers in a lot of senses. And even Coleman Hawkins has talked. I know Brad has his hyperbole sometimes, using elite and whatnot, and said that Coleman's an elite shooter. Really, he's been only about a 60 to 62% free throw shooter in his career. And I know that the numbers from three obviously are below 30% on average too. But from the free throw line, he should be better. Like the way that his stroke looks pretty smooth and it comes off pretty well. Like you would think he shoots it more efficiently at the line. Those are things that can really, you're already probably baking in some either youth at point guard or inexperience or both. Then you got some 3-point woes potentially. And if you're missing free throws too, like that can kill you.
Yeah. All right. Let's turn to more positive things. Who's your most encouraging individual on the Spain trip for Illinois basketball?
I think it was Imani Hansberry. I think there are a couple of candidates that you could pick, and I'll talk about maybe some other guys that impressed me. But Hansberry to finish as strong as he did, to have a double-double in his final game and that one against the Catalonia All-Stars. You look at his averages, he's about 11 points, 6 or 7 rebounds a game. He owned the offensive glass. You know, that Valencia game had 9 boards and 8 of them were on the offensive glass. So it's a guy that just plays with a great motor. We talked about just how hard he plays. I think he's a dirty work guy, a scrapper around the basket, going to really embrace that. I thought that when I watched the early part of the Valencia game, it did look like some finishes around the basket. Maybe it's someone that a year away from really having that grown man strength that Fletch is going to put on him to really be fully effective. But his finishing numbers in terms of percentages, I think he shot 60 to 63% from the field. You certainly like that. I just think that he bolsters that front court depth so much more if he can be relied upon to go in there and steal some minutes or push some guys. Like if Guerrier's having a rough stretch for whatever reason, you can throw Hansberry in there. Or somebody gets in foul trouble, it's Coleman or Dane. Hansberry can be a part of that mix. So I think in general, as a freshman who you wonder just how many minutes he would get, I liked what I saw from him.
I know we've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. I love this front court depth. Like you mentioned depth, but the front court especially, like this feels like the deepest, most physical front court Illinois has had since Bill Self was here, since they had Archibald, Krapalia, Lucas Johnson, Marcus Griffin. Like they have 4 or 5 guys that you can throw into this game and feel comfortable with. Like I don't worry about foul trouble. You know, Zach Edey you worry about guarding, but there's not many other Big Ten big men or post groups I'm worried about competing with on the glass and everything. I just think you have a lot of versatility, a lot of bodies, a lot of good players in that front court. And I think it's really, really encouraging what they have in that front court. And I think Imani Hansberry can play. It's just, do they need him to play a lot? Probably not, but I do think he can go in there and play. And I think that's where Guerrier gives you some versatility of, can he guard threes? He can play some small ball 5. Like Brad Underwood's he's got a good thing in that front court, I think.
Absolutely. And we know, I mean, in any given year in the Big Ten, it's great to have that strength up front. And it's a physical game. Some guys can put some fouls on you like a Zach Edey. And just to throw multiple bodies at you. I mean, we've come back to it many a times. I mean, Michigan State has done that throughout the course of Tom Izzo's time there in East Lansing, is just having a bunch of physical dudes up front and a lot of guys to really throw at you in that mix. And you want Imani to be ready to play some minutes. We are in the transfer portal era. It's a guy that is thought to should be a cornerstone piece for this program going forward, thought to be like a 4-year guy. Was a big recruiting win for Illinois to pull off, and you'd hope to get him some minutes, let him be in the mix. And you're not going to force it. You're not going to say, all right, well, it's against the betterment of the team, but we got to play this guy. But it's an ideal scenario. If he's ready to contribute, he's progressing the way that he is as a top 50, top 60 recruit, and then he feels good about his long-term path forward at Illinois. So I think that's encouraging. For sure.
Yeah, we talked a couple weeks ago after the open practice, Derek. I want to mention another guy here. I had questions about what this guy would be on this team. He's just kind of standing in the corner, not doing much. And I'm like, is that the best way to use him? Justin Harmon had a really good trip, really consistent trip. And you think about a team that needs consistent scoring. just needs a veteran presence. Justin Harmon had 30 points. He had 15 rebounds, a lot of steals.
Yep.
Plays defense. That looked good, and very few turnovers. That was one of my biggest questions about him was his turnovers, and he wasn't good from three. He was 0-6 from three. That's a concern for a team that needs three-point shooting. But that performance was encouraging for me after seeing a practice where he just wasn't involved a lot, was just kind of standing in the corner. They need it. They need somebody like that can be a consistent guy who can give you 6 to 12 points a game.
Yeah, he would have been my second choice in terms of most encouraging. And coaches love known commodities. They love when they can count on a guy for a certain – maybe the stat lines will vary game in and game out a little bit. But, I mean, his stat line was pretty much the same game in and game out throughout this trip. He was anywhere from 8 to 10 points, 5 rebounds or so, a couple assists, a couple of steals. He led the team in steals with 7. He just is a very active – hard-nosed veteran guard that he's in the mix, and I've mentioned it multiple times in competition for minutes. The guy like Draven Gibbs-Lawhorn and Sincere Harris, he's just more experienced as those guys. And Gibbs-Lawhorn's stat lines, he didn't shoot it very well, and he maybe looked like a freshman. And you have Sincere, who's offensively challenged, and Harmon can just be a steadying presence, you would hope, in that backcourt. And I just liked – I'm not going to give him – it's way too early, and he may never even live up to like an Andres Feliz type. But I just think type of role or impact, I mean, that's a high bar. But I think Andres, what he developed into for Illinois was just – you could trust him to come in, impact some scoring, go to the glass, just be a veteran that you knew you could count on. And in an ideal world, Harmon is that for you. And he's played a lot of basketball, and he was – one of the standouts in the NIT for a reason.
Yeah, he's not Ray J. Dennis, the dynamic ball handler / scorer you need, you'd like. He's not Antonio Reeves, who's a dead-eye shooter. So he's not maybe the ideal, but he can help you. Like he can certainly help this team. I mean, is it bad to say like Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins were pretty good, pretty encouraging individuals on this trip. Coleman just filling up the box score, and Terrence Shannon, they had to take him off the court just because so he wouldn't hurt these guys over in Spain, man.
Yeah. I mean, he put up 15 a game, and that was only in like 17 minutes per game. And that Valencia, I'm glad we got to see that because it was takeover Terrence Shannon in the first half. 23 of his 25, whereas before halftime. So that was awesome to see his assertiveness, get out in transition, hits the consecutive threes. I did mention earlier that –
Is Homefield going to make a Barracuda shirt instead of the Beluga one? Because the Barracuda, I like that nickname from Underwood.
That was pretty cool. I mean, you got the Barracuda and the Kingfisher together.
There you go.
Oh no, I just put
the comments are gonna be crazy now.
This live pod into sideways. The comments were a little dead, so I had to get some things going. But I think that Terrence, athletically, he's going to be able to overwhelm a lot of people in college basketball. He's going to be able to get out and go. 3-point shooting, I think, does need to be more consistent. If you're really nitpicking, if you want to talk about the difference between all Big Ten versus can you reach that upper tier of are you an All-American, that's really one of the big questions for him going forward. Coleman, I liked just the balance of some of his stat lines, like just being able to do a little bit of everything. Like that Valencia game, I don't know off the top of my head, but it was a good amount of – it was, 7-8 points.
Yeah, I got it. 7 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, just 1 turnover.
Yeah.
Against Madrid, 6 points, 1 0 for 4 for 3, but 8 rebounds, only 1 turnover. Catalonia, 13 points, 3 of 6 from 3, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. Did have 4 turnovers in that one, but just contributing across the board. That's what Coleman Hawkins is. I don't know if he's ever that 18 game guy. Like that's not who he is. He makes his impact just by impacting every aspect of the game.
Yes. I think that you do want him to be a little bit more aggressive, especially in open shot situations. He's going to have to be more efficient for that aggressiveness to match the production. But yeah, his greatest value has been and will continue to be just his ability to impact different areas of the game and being able to dish out a couple assists, be able to go get some rebounds, be able to make some effort plays. Defensively, his versatility. I think that if you're looking for him to pop up and score 15 to 20 a handful of times this season, it's probably not going to happen. And again, I've mentioned his shooting percentages; those have to get better. And until proven otherwise, he's just kind of an average shooter, if not sometimes below that. But I do like just the diversity of his game, and in that type of sense, you hope that Shannon is your guy as your featured 15, 17, 20 in a given game. Coleman's going to give you double figures, and then you hope you have maybe two other guys in double figures type of thing, instead of it being 1A, 1B of that time of point production.
4 players in Illinois history have a triple-double. Coleman Hawkins is one of them. It feels like he's going to get another one. Iowa's the only one to get 2, which was like within a couple of weeks, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. 14 days of each other. Sergio McClain and Mark Smith, 1979. That version of Mark Smith was the only one. So Coleman always is a threat to do that. Any other encouraging performances there, Derek?
I think that
let's not forget him. It feels like he's always the last one we mention.
The Nico Nuggets?
No, we'll get to Nico. Dane Danger.
Dane Danger.
I mean, he should on these trips. The post player's not great. But man, he's good. He's a really good offensive player. He's really good on the glass. There's gonna be a lot of doubles this season for Dane Danger, and I do think he'll struggle with guys who are a little bit longer than him. But he looks so good. Like, he just looks good getting up and down the court now. The turnovers are my concern with him. The turnovers and free throws are my concern with him. But you get the ball to him in the post, you get him on the glass, you get him running up and down the court. He's a really nice player.
Yeah, physically looks very good. You can tell that he's taking another stride there. And just the endurance, I think watching that Valencia game, watching him be able to get up and down, the chase down block that he had that led to I think it was a Draven Gibbs Lawhorn 3 at the other end. I mean, that's just a play that he's not making last year. He just didn't have that mobility or just that physical endurance to be able to do that. I think his confidence is really, really high. Now, yes, he's supposed to feast in these games because based on what we can tell, didn't maybe go up against Pau Gasol, Marc Gasol over there in Spain. He had some real physical mismatches inside. And, I mean, there was one play, a high-low. We talked about it after the Valencia game. Coleman throws it in, and Dane just turns around and dunks on the guy. So I really liked what I saw from him. And when you average a double-double in limited minutes, I mean, that's definitely good, and a guy that should only continue to get better. Has only played one full season in college, so I liked what I saw from him too.
We say it partly in jest, but go to your Nico Nuggets. There was some good offense from Nico Moretti.
There was. I think you gotta put a dividing line between the offense and defensive side of the ball, because offensively he looked like he belonged. Like, he was able to make some good decisions with the ball, set some guys up. I think he led the team in assists. When you look at
10 assists to 5 turnovers. 2-1. I'll take that.
I'll take it. He hit a couple of threes. I think he looked good. He looked like he belonged out there offensively and can set up some other talented scorers or some slashers to the basket. Like Sincere cut off the baseline or from the corner to the baseline. Nico saw it, hit him for a dunk. Illinois needed more of that last year. They needed more.
Yeah, can I interject? Sorry to interrupt, but the cutting was so much better. I can't tell you how often Michael Tuitt would come out here and say, somebody cut to the basket. Like Nico or even Ty with these guys who can slash to the basket, whether it's Harmon, Hawkins, Shannon, Harris, like there's so much athleticism here. Cut to the basket, like make some move without the ball, because there's so much athleticism that you can finish at the rim.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you gotta have those help defenders who are going to be in help when they're looking and seeing who has the ball. Like, keep their head on a swivel, make them actually account for you moving. Otherwise, it's so much easier for them to crash into the lane, help on Terrence. And it helps that ball handler too. It's a read and react type of thing. Teams that have experienced players, guys that know the game, that understand certain, soft spots in defenses, or just have that connection between the ball handler and themselves. Like, you think about I go back to that Kansas State Marquise Noel play where we all thought it was like a deke. He's talking to the sideline and then he throws the lob. I mean, that's a chemistry play. That's when guys are older players that know where guys are going to be, and Illinois should, as an older team, be able to do some of that stuff. But offensively, yeah, was good for Nico. Defensively, I wonder who he can guard. I think that, yes, he had a handful of steals. I thought that was great, but he got attacked in that Valencia game. I saw him. He's not the most athletic guard. He's pretty slender. He's got to be able to show he can guard his yard in order to be able to stay on the court. So I admit I've kind of been a skeptic on him being much of a factor this year. I think he's a year away, but I think on this trip offensively he showed that he can come on the court and not hurt you. Defensively, he's got to be able to show that as well, though, to make it a reality.
I think that's fair. I think he can. Hold his own offensively. I think he can help you just breaking down a defense, and if he can make 30% of threes, that might be a positive for Illinois. But yeah, defensively, I just don't know if he's going to gain the trust. All right, question marks. I guess is a way to put it. Just some individual performance that left you going, that's not great.
There are a couple areas I could go with this one. I think I would highlight probably 3-point shooting with a lot of different guys, but I think Quincy Guerrier's stat line didn't. I expected more. I expected more from a veteran who's played a lot of college basketball, 4 years of high major ball. You look at his shooting percentages; they weren't great. He was off the top of my head. I think he was probably below 40% from the field, 42% from the field, 1 for 5 from three, 40% from the line. I expected more out of him. I don't think he's going to be a high scoring type of player night in and night out. He might pop up and score 12 to 15 on a given night. I think those that have watched his time at Oregon closely or are familiar with kind of his outputs, he's been inconsistent as a scorer. So there's some of that I think maybe you have to take into account. I did like his rebounding. I like his physicality, but I just kind of maybe expect a little bit more in terms of scoring. He's supposed to be a good spot up shooter, a guy that's going to offensive rebound, get some putbacks. I just expect a little bit more of a scoring punch, knowing the competition difference between Illinois and what they were going up against.
Yeah, and you'd like to see him stretch the floor a little bit. I mean, 1 of 5, it's a very small sample size. He makes one more, you feel a little bit better about it, but missed some bunnies around the rim that I would have liked to have seen in that Valencia game. Dre Gibbs-Allhorn, we hype him up a little bit. He looks great in the open practice, and listen, they feel good about him. 6.7 points per game on 33% shooting. He wasn't shy, averaged 8 shots a game, including 15 against Valencia, which was probably his best game, 12 points and 3 steals. 2 of 12 from 3. But Derek, you've mentioned this guy can be a streaky shooter. I don't think we expect anything less than streakiness from a freshman guard who's been streaky in his career, but he's talented. He will play, but I just think Illinois got to be able to deal with the ups and downs of him.
I think it's a good reminder for everybody who's getting caught up in the hype. Look, I understand it. He's very talented. You should be excited about Draven Gibbs-Allhorn. You watch that steal spin move to evade a defender and the windmill against Valencia. There aren't very many guys that can make that kind of play. So you're glad that he's on your side, but there is the freshman-like inconsistency. And I wrote it, and when I go back to his EYBL last summer and spring, he had some highs and lows where during a weekend, he was the MVP of the entire EYBL, shot the cover off of it 40+% from 3. Then you go into July, couple of Peach Jam, and then a tournament in Kansas City, and he's sub 30% from 3. So some of that's just natural in basketball. The lines and averages even out. It's not like somebody is a 40% shooter every time they go into the gym. That sometimes that's just, some guys are like that, but not always. But I think it's one of those situations where, yes, he's a freshman. You're going to ride some of the roller coaster. He made some mistakes in playing the point guard, and he'll learn from him. He's athletic. His athleticism definitely jumps off the screen. I love that. I love his confidence. I think he's got a chance to make a real impact on this team. It's just going to be some of the bumpy road of a traditional freshman, which is why I think, highlighting to what we talked about encouraging wise, if Harmon can be more steady as an older guy, that balances some of that out and allows you to ride that wave through it.
I don't know if Luke Goody was a huge positive or negative. He shot decently the first couple games, 3 for 9 for 3. Then we had an 0 for 5 performance that really sunk him there, but he gets out through the glass. And I'm not going to be too concerned about him as a 3-point shooter, but you need him to be good. You need him to be closer than 40%. Like if somebody's going to be close to 40% from 3, it's it's got to be Lou Goody this year. The other guy I would bring up is Sincere Harris got a little chucker in him in this trip, at least early in the trip. 1 for 5 from 3, then 0 for 3 for 3. Only shot 1 3-pointer in the final game. Love Sincere, what he brings. 5 steals in the first game, 7 rebounds in the second game. I want confidence because he wasn't confident at all last year. I don't want an overabundance of confidence as a shooter from Sincere Harris. So maybe the trip was like, hey, go shoot. But when it comes game time, I don't know if I want Sincere Harris shooting 5 threes.
Selective aggressiveness.
Yes.
That's the phrase I'm using for him on offense. That's what has to be there. I think open court slashing, absolutely. Yes. Being able to cut off a corner and dunk. He's not having a problem finishing at the rim now. I think that's definitely a great thing to see. In terms of like trying to create something and pull up off the dribble, taking some threes that you're probably open for a reason, you just got to have some self-awareness there and understand. I do think that there's a chance that they just rolled with it a little bit more on this trip. You're in exhibition games. You're letting guys see what they got and see if they can just go out there and play and find themselves. But Sincere has limitations as a shooter, and that played itself out. I mean, I think he took the second most shots, if not the third most shots on the team. I think it was second only behind Terrence Shannon. That shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. He shouldn't take 5 threes in the game. He's got to have some understanding there, but these games don't count. So there is that qualifier. But I do think that he was someone I was going to point out in this segment as someone that needs to just kind of have a feeling of, all right, dial it down sometimes. Transition, go for it.
Yes. He looked good in transition too. Remember all the dunks he was missing early in the season? Like he finished his dunks on this trip. All right, last guy, maybe the most important piece on this team, Ty Rodgers. How do we feel about Ty Rodgers' trip? You got the average here, Derek. You did all the math. 8.3 points, 6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shot 56%, and shot 54% from the free throw line. And last 2 games, 3 of 4 from the free throw line. So I felt like the first game, a little uneven. Second game didn't start so well, but seemed like he finished well here.
He did, yeah, and especially that last game, 5 for 5 from the field. Saw some of the highlights on Twitter of him playing some bully ball, getting a matchup with a guard and throwing a little bit of a shoulder and being able to just power through him and finish at the rim. That was something that was a difference in that game versus the Valencia game. I think he was only 1 of 6 from the field in the Valencia game, got to the rim, but just didn't finish. And I think that's something that, on the whole, you look at the stat line, I think really outside of the free throw percentage, you don't have a big problem with it. Like, could the assisted turnover be a little bit better? It was sub 2-1. It was like 1.6-1. At least it's in the positive side as far as the assists go. I still think, and again, we didn't get to watch the full game film of the first game or the third game. What I saw in the Valencia game and just kind of still judging off what we witnessed in the open practice, still think he's just a little rough around the edges at point guard. I think some of his stretches, even in some of the things I've heard, he'll have some really encouraging stretches, make good decisions, use his body well. Yes, you're going to have the shooting, just that not being a part of his game. But then there are other stretches where you just kind of see that maybe playing a little bit too fast. I think they want him to play fast in transition and slow it down a little bit more in the half court. I think there's some of that of him just learning how that goes and learning how to operate when he's on the ball as much as he is. So I feel pretty overall, like if you just ask me how I feel about Ty Rodgers, I feel good about him as a player. Him in the point guard role, I think it still has to be – it's still too early to have a definite stance on it. But it's a work in progress for sure, 100%.
I agree with how you're wording that because I love Ty Rodgers, the player. If he's your top point guard, I still got questions about that. So, and I think this trip was encouraging on the most part for Ty Rodgers. Is it encouraging for Ty Rodgers, the point guard? I'm not sure. Right. I think that's kind of the way to put it. All right, before we get out of here, let's answer a few questions on the live YouTube channel. If you guys got any, we'll try to get to some before you get out of here. Keith asks, do you expect Hawkins to reduce his three-point attempts this year?
It's a good question. I think in general, the thinking for Illinois is that we should be a little bit better of a three-point shooting team, but we want to take less volume threes, and that should also increase our percentage. So with Coleman, he's turned down. It's all for me is the quality of shot.
Yes.
If it's an open catch and shoot in rhythm, take it.
Don't hesitate.
I'm good with him taking that every time. It's the shot fake off the dribble or step back late in the shot clock. That's the stuff that you want to take out of his game. And I think if you're able to improve some of that decision making, then the percentages will improve some. In general, he does need to just be more efficient on those catch and shoots. But I don't know. I could see it being around the same, but you would hope the quality of the looks are better in his favor for making them.
And to be fair to Coleman, some of the bad shots he took last year is because there wasn't a point guard. Because Jaden Epps really was not a point guard. And he had the ball at the top of the key and no one's moving. And he's like, oh, I got to throw it up here. You need to get rid of those. But yeah, he shot 132 last year. I don't think he needs to shoot more than that. That's for a game. I don't think he needs to shoot more than that unless he's feeling it and taking good ones. So I think he can shoot the same amount, just making sure there's more quality. Like, don't pass up the good ones. He did that too many times last year with all those pump fakes people got angry about. But don't take as many fadeaway threes.
I do think he'll still probably be a streaky guy from three. He'll still be one of those. He'll have a Wisconsin game where he knocks down 5, or he has 3 or 4 in one game, and then he'll go 0 for 4, 0 for 5 in a night. Yeah. That's probably how he'll be, but and you can live with that.
A little bit of a flat shot, isn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah. Comparative like Luke Goody, who's just pretty shot. Berserker, can you coach around the free throw problem? For instance, only play Ty and Dane in the first half of each half. Keep them both out of the game once we have reached the bonus. Can you do that, Derek, with Ty Rodgers and Dane Danger, 2 of your 5 most important players?
I mean, I think late in games, you got to have some of that awareness of who you don't want on the floor. The last 4 or 5 minutes of a game, really, probably you could even shorten it a little bit more if you're in a position where teams are going to automatically foul you. Like, that's already determined. They got to foul. You want Ty and Dane off the floor. In terms of the first half of each half, I don't think you micromanage it that much. I do think there is something to be said for playing Ty and Dane together in general because of 3-point shooting and floor spacing and that type of thing.
That's why we talk about Dane coming off the bench a lot.
Yes. And I do like that, if it's late in a ball game and you throw the ball into Terrence to go to the line, or Damas to go to the line, Luke Goody to go to the line, I'd feel good about some of those guys. You just got to make sure that the ball's not in Sincere's hands or Ty's hands or Dane's hands. And you'd hope that Coleman improves as far as his free throw shooting in case he's the one walking to the line.
Another X's and O's question for you, Derek. Berserker asks, this team seems perfectly set up for a high-low motion offense like Kansas runs. Any chance Bragg goes that route?
I mean, I like the high-low dynamic with Coleman and Dane, obviously. I do think you could even flip it some where even if Gary A's your 4 and you've got Coleman at the 5, Gary A's going to have some physical matchups against some 4s where he could be down low and Coleman's still out high.
Damask is a post-up option. Ty is a post-up option.
Yeah, that's a good point. Damask mid-post stuff at SIU, pretty good. Like, he's maybe going to have some matchups at 3s where he can post up some. I think that's a good point. And I'm going to be very curious to see. I think that's something also, as you you reference, I'm not making excuses, and I'm really not. I think one context, though, offensively, like, when you watch the Valencia game, there's no sets. You're not running sets. You're not getting into your stuff because you don't really have a whole lot in.
And for me, it's like one of the biggest questions of the offseason.
Yes.
What does Brad Underwood do? How does he scheme this up with the known flaws, but with our real strengths of this team defensively, size, athleticism, physicality? How does he scheme this up? Because we've gone over it the last couple seasons. He's come up with an idea of what they're going to do and then has to scrap it midway through the season because it's not working during non-conference play. I don't think he's got to get this right. Like, there's a lot on Brad you built this roster. How are you going to win with it?
Yep, absolutely. And I'm fascinated to see how he schemes up things in the half court to get guys shots and just try to put players in the right positions. But I think the high-low dynamic is definitely something they can play into if they want to utilize that. I think that's a good point.
Taylor, seeing the team as it is now, does getting Ray J make this roster too, quote, busy, unquote?
I wouldn't have a problem with it being busy with the legit.
No, the answer is no.
No.
No, you need a really good point guard, and Ray J Dennis is a really good point guard who can be dynamic and create for teammates and score. Don't have that. Don't have that on your. Maybe Dre Gibbs-Allhorn can be that sometimes. That's going to be inconsistent. No, I would deal with the fallout of having a Ray J Dennis busy up everything and potentially make somebody unhappy because he's really good.
I'd be busy forecasting Illinois to be a top 15 team in the country. That's what I would be doing. Like you look at his assist numbers, he shot 37% from three last year. He's exactly what you need and would really,
which is why they went
the last piece in terms of this team being like rather complete and checking pretty much every box.
Speaking of point guards, we were talking about Andres Feliz in our Justin Harmon conversation. Chris said, "You guys sure do love Feliz." Yeah, we do. Did you watch him play? One of the greatest injustices is not being able to see Andres Feliz in the NCAA tournament. Can you imagine if they had Andres Feliz against Loyola, or if they had Andres Feliz against Arkansas, or name whatever to Houston? Like, that's what they needed. They needed that kind of guy. He's just everything I love in a college basketball guard. He's just toughness, gets to the rim, strong as hell. He's everything I like in college basketball guards, like the Jacob Poling kind of guys.
Got that dog in him. I'll never forget that Iowa game. That Super Bowl Sunday Iowa game was a great battle, and he just rips that ball out of Garza's hands and finishes underneath. And just, a lot of heart in that kid. He's not a kid. He was a grown man when he was here in Illinois.
Grown-ass man.
Yeah, but how could you not love him for sure?
We'll do a two-parter here and then we'll wrap up. Sante asks, does Luke Goody crack the starting lineup this year?
He can. I don't think – I still think if you're going through the starting lineup and you're trying to say for sure, it's what? It is and
then
Coleman.
And Berserker asks, any thoughts on probable starting lineup this year?
TJ Coleman and
Givens, yes.
Those are the Givens?
Quincy, probably.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, Ty over Quincy, probably, right?
I'd say Ty, just based on the way things are stacking up with him at point guard, and then you make a decision on how you want to play in the front court. Like,
I think Quincy with Coleman makes the most sense. I like bringing Dane off the bench, especially if you're starting Ty. I think it just makes sense. Dane's done it. He's done it well. I don't think he's going to throw a fit about not starting either, because he's going to play as much as he wants. He's going to be a really key player on this team. Then the question comes, do you want to play Marcus Domask or Luke Goody? Mm-hmm. And I could see the argument for Marcus Domask with Dre Gibbs-Allhorn and Dane Danger. That's a lot of offense potentially coming off the bench. If you start Domask, it's a lot of ball handlers, a lot of guys that like to have the ball in their hands, like to create. It's a lot of good passing, but I like having a shooter out there like Luke Goody, a guy that I have no question is going to bring effort, energy right away. I think that's going to be necessary. So I could see the argument for Domask or Goody, but yeah, I think Goody's got a chance if he was going to really start like he was. Brad Underwood said he was going to last year.
Can we address that?
Yeah. Do you believe it?
Not really.
No.
Like, if you look at the starting lineup against Kansas, I think, if I remember correctly, Shannon was the point guard. It was Shannon, Goody, Meyer, Coleman, and what? That had been Dane? Or maybe RJ was in there instead of Dane. I think it was Coleman, RJ. Anyways, Sky, you need to start a point guard. I don't think you were going to start TJ at point guard.
I couldn't even remember if Meyer was healthy enough to play, but yeah, he did.
Yeah. I don't think Goody. That's just my opinion. I don't.
He was saying that because it sounded good, and he was rewarding Luke, right? He was rewarding Luke, but listen, I don't think if Luke Goody starts, I don't think he's playing 20 minutes. Right. I think Marcus Domask probably plays more minutes than him, but I think with this team, we talk about the depth and we talk about the weaknesses. It's going to be really important for rotations. Rotations is more important than starters. Like, I think Dane Danger is going to be a top 3 or 4 player on this team, but I think he might be used best coming off the bench, kind of like, Purdue did a couple years ago with
Trevion Williams.
Yeah, Trevion Williams.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That's something to evaluate, just how they see Damask with maybe that provides a nice ball handling option when you throw in Gibbs Lawhorn, maybe as your backup point guard, and that settles him a little bit because Damask is a very good secondary creator and passer and whatnot. I think your best my projected starting five when I gave a couple months ago, and I still think it might be your best overall lineup is Ty, Terrence, Damask, Guerrier, and Coleman. But
I think that's your closing lineup. I think that's your closing lineup for sure. I think Domask and Berserker said, I think Domask is a better overall player than Luke Goody, but it's just, is he better used in that second group off the bench? And then you figure it out after there if you want to start a game well. Because let's be honest, like Illinois doesn't usually start games well the last couple of years either. So figuring out that rotation, I think, is really important with this group.
Yep. Good to have options. Good to continue to be able to let that internal competition spill all over into the fall. And hopefully you got Goody and Damask shooting it well. Because if you don't really have enough pop from beyond the arc.
That's correct. All right, Derek, you thought this was going to be like 30, 40 minutes. Of course, we go about an hour as we usually do. Thanks for the 100+ people that were with us on the YouTube live stream. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate you guys watching us live on the YouTube channel. Hit the like button, of course. Subscribe to us there and hit the notifications bell as well. If you're listening on the Old School Podcast, you can give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast as well. Derek Piper, thank you, buddy. An hour of basketball chat in August is what we do, man.
Enjoyed it. It's always fun.
All right, everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer Podcast.